Thank you for inviting me talk about Living Waters. I'm part of a nonprofit parachurch organization called the Rise Urban Ministries. It was founded by Sheila Wise Rowe. She and her husband have been over in South Africa for the last 10 years, and at that point I've took over along with other people in terms of coordinating a ministry called Living Waters. And Living Waters is a program that's been developed by Desert Stream Ministries. They have local expressions all across the world. It's not a big organization, but there is expressions pretty much everywhere. It's really focused. This ministry is focused on relational and sexual brokenness. It's not all that other people come and they get things out of it because pretty much I think there's many common themes to different expressions of brokenness, and so some things everybody really has some sense of relational brokenness to begin with, but whether it's sexual brokenness or whether it's just other kinds of behaviors, there's some very similar core similarities in terms of the origins of that brokenness. And so people come even if the description doesn't quite match that. Really, as such, it kind of can cover a lot of grounds. So what we do is a 21 week, once a week. Typically, we've been meeting on Monday nights. It's from 7 to 9:45. We have a little bit of worship. They have a talk, and then we meet in same-sex small groups. So it's a pretty intense commitment, and it's only people who are really know that they're struggling are willing to make this kind of a commitment in general. Some people come just because they know they need more, but most people come only because they're really hurting. So I came into this about 17 years ago. Came into it. I've been kind of struggling with some of my own addictions in various forms. Some sexual and some just around work. And it's kind of based upon a lot of, I was pretty anxious and lonely growing up, and I really struggled with a sense of who I was, and I had a lot of struggles with relationships with other people. And even though I became a Christian as I was a teenager, and that helped me to grow, I still struggled a lot. Over time, things got better, but there's still ways in which, it just kind of felt like the promise of freedom and redemption that is, part of such a strong part of our faith wasn't really totally true for me. And that kind of led me to be part of a Living Waters program at that point. And so that kind of helped me to begin to have some traction, and I became a leader after that, and eventually have taken over coordinating the program here in the Boston area. And I've augmented that with other kinds of healing experiences and some counseling. So I want to talk a little bit about what I think are some of the core aspects. I think these are probably core to many programs that want to reach out and help people. I think probably the biggest thing that we do as part of Living Waters is we help people to overcome shame. We create a safe environment where people can come in, because it's a closed group environment, and they deal with the same people every week, that gives them an opportunity to begin to crack open that door that they haven't been willing to really share with other people. And, secrets begin to come out. And we definitely, only broken is our secrets. So it's creating a safe environment. I think that shame and hiding is a epidemic, period. But it's an epidemic within the church, and it's people come into Living Waters thinking that they're the only ones that have this problem or have a problem, whatever the problem is. You name it, I'm the only one that has that, and everybody else is good. They look good. They got things together, but that's kind of a lie from the pit of hell. And it's my experience is that whenever I get to know people, everybody has things that are going on underneath them. But unfortunately, as a church, by and large, we don't talk about those things. We don't talk about the real struggles in our lives, and we're focused on putting up some sort of a mask that kind of hides the realities that are in our lives. And so Living Waters is a place to begin to find out that you are in some ways just like everybody else, that you're broken, and it's an opportunity to begin to talk about those things, be able to reveal those things. And when it's kind of allowing the light is at the beginnings of really confessing the truth about what's going on inside of you, is allowing God's light to kind of come in and to shine in on that. I think the second thing that we want to focus on, or we focus on, is really allowing God to do the work. It's without question we all have a role in the process. But often I think that role is a little bit different than typically I think what I take coming out of church. It's kind of an idea of I think we come from a work ethic, or maybe especially New England work ethic of discipline myself. I'm going to focus. I'm going to do the right thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it kind of does take the eyes off of God, and in the end, there's limits to what we can do, and we need God to really do a work within us. And so Living Waters is a place where we seek God and we receive prayer. People receive prayer to begin to allow Him to do the transformation. I think in a way that we all want to be able to understand what the process is. We want to be able to define it and know what the next step is. But I think God works in a more organic way, and we have to be able to release control and allow Him to lead us down the path. What do we happen to need? What do I need right now to be able to make the next step? I may want to get someplace this far down the road, but I'm not there yet. I need to make this next step. What is that next step? And I think God customizes that. He reveals and customizes it in the way that each individual needs that. So we just need to allow the Holy Spirit to come and to kind of guide that process. I think the third thing that's really important is that the process is meant to help people to connect on a heart level. I think it took me a long time in my healing process to really connect with my heart and the pain that I felt. There's this, I'm an engineer, and I've done well in school, and I was kind of focused on mind type things and intellectual things. And I think that tends to be true. We are, kind of focused on the mind, even within the church. We want to know what the truth is. And sure, that's helpful, but that's not, all that there is to it. It doesn't really deal with the pain that I experienced in my life. And I really didn't know what to do with that pain. And, it's very difficult to experience that. And so I spent a lot of energy just basically burying it. But, it keeps coming up. The pain expresses itself in terms of our behaviors and our thought patterns. And so it's really through prayer that God began to reveal my pain through my memories and through symbolic images. I was at a counselor's, and he was doing some sort of, I forget, some type of therapy. He was drumming on my knees, but I just took that as an opportunity. He's playing some music in my ears, but I took it as an opportunity to really listen to God in the process. And some images would come up to that. Like I had an image of being born, in a very sterile hospital room, and I just kind of slid right out onto a cold, sterile, stainless steel table. And it was kind of, it represented just how I felt like my world was, kind of the world I came into, that it wasn't a welcoming world. It really enabled me to know myself as a person of worth. I was disconnected and alone in a very difficult space. And so I think, while that obviously did not happen, it kind of represented how I felt, I think from an early stage in my life. So God began to, speak and reveal those kind of things to me, and also allowed me to begin to see that the ways in which I would try to protect myself, that I'm going to do certain ways, I'm going to work hard in order to be able to achieve somebody's affirmation. I want this, or I'm going to behave in a certain way to receive people's affirmation. All those things that really were not life-giving, decisions that I made on my own, as opposed to allowing God to come and to work, deal with those things and be able to release those things. So what we want to be able to do in Living Waters is to, allow those things to come up and to begin to release those to God and allow Him to begin to speak to us and own our own sinful response to the ways in which we tried to take care of things on our own. So we kind of, in some ways, systematically try to do a little bit, somewhat systematically. We look at our families of origin, and often there's things that happen there. We were raised by broken people themselves, and even though they may have loved us and taken care of us, there are things that didn't work for us. And so we'll look there. We can look at other places of abuse or trauma that we've experienced, and begin to give those to God. But it's a challenging place to go, to begin to experience the pain that we've experienced in our lives is not a place that most people want to go, and it's hard. It's even it's hard for people to really want to go there. The fourth aspect, I think, that's critical to us is just simply the cross. It's obviously in this process of being able to release the pain, be able to release the places of our sinful responses, and be able to move forward potentially into forgiveness. All of that relies totally on God's grace and mercy and His promise that He's come to redeem us and to set us free. And so it's really, every week we are really, in essence, the cross sits there and is a reminder that this is the place where we can go to be able to let go of our burdens. So that's kind of, I think, gives maybe kind of a framework, of how we pursue this. There are some things there's some core truths that I think that are, maybe not necessarily unique to Living Waters, but I think tends to be, is in some ways somewhat different. So our focus is that life is all about relationships. Just totally and completely about relationships. I like to think that, my work and what I get done in my work is something significant. But I've realized at this stage that how I feel about life is almost entirely how the quality of my relationships with God and my quality of my relationships with other people. So one aspect, I think we've probably all heard the phrase or think about, but, we are needy people. That's something that it's, God has created us with a need for Him. And I think as part of that, a need for others as well. And that's just core. So we have many legitimate needs, and needs that really need to be met. We need to be loved. We know that we are people of value. We need provision for food and shelter, so on and so forth. There's many legitimate needs. Part of the problem comes up is that those needs don't get met. And when we're growing up, some of those needs didn't get met in the way that we were hoping for them to get met. And so the process of being wounded and broken can start there. But kind of recognizing, you get to the point that, because it's so painful and you haven't met needs, I know that I was tempted to think, okay, I'm strong, independent. You got the John Wayne kind of image, I'm independent, I can do everything on my own. And it kind of causes us again to shut down the fact that we have these needs. And so Living Waters, we're trying to focus on the fact that we need God and we need others in this process. I think the second thing that's really core to us is that we are made in God's image. Fundamentally, we all know that means that we are spiritual beings. It also means that we are of great value, because we've been made in His image. Related to that, that's really core to Living Waters, is that we are created as men and women. We are gender beings. We are made in His image, male and female. So it's core to our relationships, core to our sexuality is really the concept of gender. And so we, as in part of Living Waters, we want to affirm a legitimate, God-centered sense of what it means to our own sense of gender, and we also want to be able to embrace the other. So there's this sense of complementarity that God has ordained as part of being male and female, is this sense of complementarity. And so we want to recognize our own sense of unique expression of gender, and we have a unique aspect, and we all have our individual ways in which we are male and female. But to be able to recognize that and embrace, often we've shut off parts of our gender. We've maybe shut off, I could shut off my sense of a male, the sense of authority, was destructive in my life. And then, you can also, even as a man, I can shut off, and not really be sensitive to the good of the feminine, and which really allows me to be able to connect on a heart level, be able to connect to God, be able to connect to other people. And so I think, just being able to not push those things away, but to bring them in and to really allow those things to grow within us. And that allows us to more authentically be able to connect with other people in the process. When I would read the Bible, all I would see was, God's judgment. And even though intellectually I could hear about God's love, I wasn't able to receive it. And so as I began to work through issues of forgiveness there, it helped me to be able to see God in a more true fashion, be able to receive the wholeness of who He was, as opposed to pushing and fighting against parts of it. So I think that's at least somewhat of a overview of some of the things that are important to us in terms of Living Waters and what do we try to do. So I guess, I don't know, is questions next, or do you want to do questions afterwards?
Sure, let's do some questions now, and then we can do some questions.
Yeah, tell me about your meetings. You say that it's like it takes a very intense person to commit to.
Well, I think it's
What's
intense.
Expected that
Yeah.
person that will come to the meeting.
Yeah, it is intense. I mean, in the sense that, there's a sense of, really, I think, being a sense of being frustrated with where they are to begin to walk into it. But, I think that, a certain amount of maturity is helpful in terms of coming into Living Waters. It's, I think to be able to get the most out of it, it helps if you can, you have some basis of faith, and you have, you're willing to read and, kind of reflect a little bit as part of the process. Having said that, and I would have to say that one of the things that concerns me about Living Waters is that by and large we've had people that are, college graduates. But I think that, in the last couple years that we've had several people who for that's not true. Actually we had a couple this last year that were just in the process of coming out of being homeless. But they had a lot of support in their church environment, and I think that helped to make that possible. So I think that support is probably would be key if you don't have a lot of resources coming into the process.
Are these like covenant groups? They're like you were saying, they're a closed group. Does it go for a certain amount of time?
It goes over 21 weeks or so.
Okay.
Yeah, so it depends. We did some Saturdays this last year, so it wasn't, still 21 sessions, but not over that long a period of time. Yeah, so from that perspective, yes, we're looking for you to make a commitment. We charge a fee for doing it, but because it's a closed group, if you can't really make a commitment to doing the whole thing, then that hurts the group. When people leave, there's always some sort of dynamic there that goes on. And so, that's challenging. So, but yes, it requires a commitment. And I think, everybody says it's a huge sacrifice to lose, every Monday night for that kind of a period of time. It is a big commitment. But, I think you get out what you put in, The fact that you put in that kind of an energy, I think that you get out. I think that a lot of the people that, I think there's enough people come out, it's often, I think, go on and they have, it really helps them to transition and to be more of a leader in their environment. There's a transformation that goes on that allows them to be effective. I think that, the whole thing of discipleship within the church, what really enables somebody to move from, just kind of being there nominally to really making a total commitment. And I think Living Waters is one of the places where people can kind of, when they begin to see God move, and then when they begin to see changes in their lives, and when they're no longer spend their time shackled by shame, then people are able to move forward in significant ways.